What's going on YouTube? Welcome back to another Pantheon video. For those of you that haven't been following this channel, you'll know that I've picked this game up fairly recently. It's just come into early access and I'm having a ton of fun, but it does come with a very steep learning curve. Now, for those of you looking to try out the game, firstly, I would highly recommend that you do. But for those of you looking to try out the game, this particular video is going to be a few tips that I personally wish that I knew when I first started playing the game to make your adventure as easy as possible. Now, before we go ahead and jump into the video, if you do find any of these tips useful or you want to see more Pantheon gameplay, please do consider leaving a like rating and subscribing here for more. So to get straight to it, before we actually do anything, when you first spawn into the game, what I would highly recommend you guys do, providing you can see this, is go into the settings, go on to the general tab, and just play around with a few things. This game is of course early access, however to me it's more early alpha. The fundamentals of the game here are fantastic, but there's a few things that just need addressing. Ultimately just need a little bit of help. So a couple of things you can do to improve your quality of life whilst playing this game is going into this setting here which says only climb when climb key is held. The reason why this is important is there are so many surfaces that you can run into, and if your character makes contact with that surface, you will automatically start to climb no matter whether you had the intentions or not, which, if you can imagine, in a combat situation, it's not particularly ideal. Now, so a lot of these settings here are personal preference. Show endurance bar, I know a lot of people have this show until full, so it goes away. You can leave it on default, you can leave it always on. Now, if you are the sort of person that wants to manage your resources at all times, go ahead and leave that always on. Enable auto attack is an important one to change. By default, I think it's on any melee attack, but I personally have it on any attack whatsoever. So because my character is a wizard, if I do run out of mana and I want to close the gap a little bit, I don't have to worry about pressing a separate key or a separate click to attack the mob, or if the mob is running away, I can just automatically attack it. The player base of this game is stereotypically a little bit older, so if you're like me, you're into your 30s or older, and you can't see a damn thing, then come into the chat font size here, change this, and that will scale up the text, as you can see here, to either massive, depending on how blind you are, or a little bit smaller if you want that too. Disabling click to clear targets, I tend to sort of play around with, depending on what I want at the time. Ultimately, if you target an enemy, and you kill the enemy, or you click on an NPC or another player walking away, until you click somewhere on the screen to remove it, you'll have a target just like this, for example, and that will come up indefinitely. Whereas if you disable click to clear targets over time, that will just clear itself away. Now into the more performance-focused section of the video, and of course the game. This game, as I'm sure you've heard many times, and of course I've said it, it is in its very early stages. I would say it runs very well, but the optimization can be a bit hit and miss. These are the settings that I've just generally kind of adopted, really, and kind of gone for. I like to have my nameplate on. VSync I've set to 1. Resolution is, of course, your native resolution on your monitor. But one setting I feel really makes an impact, I don't know if it's just because I record a lot as well, but the difference between quality on high and medium is so minuscule in terms of what it does for your visual aesthetic, but what it does for your performance, it's huge. So I've just dropped this down to medium. It's incredibly smooth. There are certain parts of the game that run really well on high, but I just feel like for what the game adds in terms of having it on high, it's really not worth doing. So drop that down to medium and you are good to go. So moving on to key bindings, this is a lot of it personal preference. Ultimately, I do like the standard traditional feel of some of the key bindings like you would see in like World of Warcraft Classic. Your character sheet and your bag are adapted into the same tab, so it kind of felt weird pressing I to bring up my character sheet, so I just changed that to B. You've got your professions, you've got your character sheet, you've got your inventory there as well. I quite like having K for like skills, J for journal, you know, all the things that make sense. Auto attack was set to like some sort of weird squiggle by default, but because it's on the hotbar there, it kept sort of tripping my brain out a little bit, so I just put 0. Once you've got a few spells and a few skills, you won't really open with an auto attack anyway, so you won't really need to press it because your skills will automatically set the auto attack as you go. But just play around with it. Just be mindful that your hotbars right now, you can't just drag and drop any of these skills onto any of these bars. Certain bars down here have predetermined locations for the skills. So if we come up to the top here, click on frail shielding, you can see I can't, even if I drag it off, I can't drag it back on. There is no option to do so. So just whichever slot is available here is what will go into that slot. So if I go ahead and click on mana skin, so I want that ultimately in this box here, you'll notice that this won't actually locate to any other boxes around here. It won't go on the bottom bar and it won't go on this left-hand bar. Each of these skill bars are designed to do totally different things for totally different abilities. So we're going to right click, add it, that goes into that slot, and then we can go back, frail shielding, grab that and fill it out. You will eventually gain more skills than you have slots for. So just be mindful of that. Don't feel like you've got to have all of them at all times or you're missing out. So once you're actually in, once you've actually loaded into the game, you will spawn, for example, depending on what class you are, if you spawn as a warrior, you'll spawn roughly around about here. The first thing you want to do is open your bag. You can see I've got an abundance of rubbish in there at the moment, but you'll have a couple of scrolls, which will give you some skills. Automatically click on them. First thing you do, learn your skills, and then go into your skill bar, put them on your bar, and so on and so forth. Secondarily, you'll have a little scroll which will give you a quest. That quest, particularly if you spawn here, will take you to the center of town. So what you're going to want to do, you're going to run over here. This is known as the well. So this is like the center of the town. So typically where everyone hangs out. You've got the bank over there. You've got some crafters over there. General goods over there. But your quest will take you to this guy right here. This guy will introduce you to gathering skills and gathering tools. You will want to go through and accept every single one of these quests, and more importantly, you'll get a quest which will give you 2 profession tokens. Those 2 tokens are incredibly important, depending on how you think about the game. If you just want to go out there and kill stuff, you can absolutely do that. They're not going to hold that against you. However, what I mean by important is, with the 2 tokens you've got, you cannot override them. So whichever professions you pick, you are stuck with, at least for now. So what I would bear in mind is that personally, I went for alchemy, so alchemy, herbology, and I did start to go with weaponsmithing because I wanted to make myself another weapon until I eventually found one. And this is where I learned the hard way. The gear that you can craft early on will only see you up to a certain way. If anything, it's probably not even worth it, because once you start to get close to level 10, you'll start to be able to fight mobs that will be able to drop stuff for you, and it will instantly become better than what you can craft anyway. So if it was me, I would personally go back, unlearn that skill if I could, and take something else. So just bear that in mind for all professions. So with the quest that you get from Aldius, he'll also give you a number of profession tools as well, sort of crafting and gathering tools. You want to grab all of those because that will be a really, really good way to make money early on in the game through skinning, through mining, wood cutting, basically anything that you can do outside of combat that will earn you money. Money is quite scarce to come by, especially there's not a whole lot of loot drops outside of some of the goblins and early skeletons. So you'll just want to go through and mine and collect everything, basically, as much as your bag will allow you to do, because that really will put you in as good a stead as you possibly can. So moving on to the topic of navigation, it'll become very apparent to you very early on that you have no map. And when you're in a brand new game, there's no map. It's quite overwhelming as to work out sort of where you are or where you're supposed to be going. Your quest text will give you a rough indication as to sort of what you're looking for, but you are very much kind of on your own. I'd recommend early on just sticking to the pathways. You know, you will start to see left and right hand side. You'll start to see some mobs that you can farm, depending on how far you traveled. That will depend on how difficult they are. But just taking sort of some of the landmarks and that around you, like for example the docks here. If later on someone asks you for help or asks you to join a group, and they say, oh, we're fighting the thugs down by the docks, then that's typically located just over the back here. And then typically the route out of town, which I believe there's 2, there's one here and one there, that's called the crossroads. So if you head out that way, walk for about 2 minutes, if that, you'll come to a crossroads, which will take you to a bridge. There's a building right there, or you can go straight over. And that is generally where people depict the layout of the land early on. But just kind of get used to your surroundings, get used to sort of walking around. Daytime is a lot more manageable. When it comes to nighttime, it can be horrible. When you're brand new, you don't know where you're going, you can't see any of the landmarks. So you really do need to get a feel or a lay of the land quite early on. And that's definitely how I would recommend it. Now, outside of the game, of course, with every issue, there is a solution when it comes to gaming and communities. As much as there is no map in the game, there are community maps which are available, and a website I'm going to point you to right now, which is fantastic. I'll leave this particular website linked in the video description. But this particular website has so many amazing resources. One of the most popular ones I use is the interactive map. You can see there's blue dots for NPCs, red dots for mobs. You can locate landmarks, supply crates. You can even search for certain NPCs that you're looking for. It's really, really an incredibly useful tool when you're really early on. You can actually see it get updated moment by moment as well. And this is all community driven as far as I'm aware. You can get details on NPCs, mobs, camps done. You can see it's all located here, and this is all community driven. So this is something, if I've got 2 monitors, which I have now, this is something that I would have set up all the time. Now, when you are out on your adventures, this is something that you'll just eventually just come to terms with. You'll know sort of your own limits. You'll know sort of where you are. But I would just recommend being very aware of your surroundings, especially when you start to venture off past these early zones, because a lot of these mobs here, like if you press C, you can see that these are indifferent to your presence. That means that unless you attack them, they're not going to attack you. But there are a lot of mobs that are ready to kill you, and they will do so very, very easily. Now, there is a mechanic called social aggro in this game, so if you are in combat with an enemy and you walk past another enemy, chances are that enemy is going to aggro towards you as well, and fighting one mob in this game can be hard enough, let alone fighting 2 or 3. That is pretty much a death wish. So just zoom your camera out a little bit, have a good look around you, and just take fights that favour you. Like, for example, with this bat here, we know that, I mean, providing we actually hit this and don't miss, we know that we can kill this with ease. Okay, this is well under our level, so to speak. So just be mindful. If you do find yourself in a situation where you are dying, or you do die, for example, then you will ultimately leave a corpse behind, you'll leave your inventory, and all of your hard-earned money as well. It can be difficult memorizing landmarks and memorizing parts of the game as a whole, let alone kind of memorizing where your corpse is. And even if you do manage to locate where it is, it could be in a less than favorable spot. So if that is the case, I'd recommend heading back to town. You'll need to find a player who is playing a summoner and see if they can very kindly summon your corpse for a small fee. There are many occasions where you can just run to your corpse, but if you do find yourself in the midst of a cave or a dungeon or in a less than favourable spot, then I would highly recommend doing that. Lastly, this is just a bit of quality of life stuff. As of right now, in terms of the combat log that is on the right hand side here, there is, as far as I'm aware, no real way to move it or get rid of it, but I would recommend when you log in, because I think this resets every time, just tick group or self, just so you're not getting constant updates from everyone else that's fighting mobs around you. And if you do want to go the extra mile and really help yourself out, you can actually create new tab channels on your text box as well, so you can set stuff up like looking for group, trade, main chat, and just to kind of help siphon out a little bit, because for the most part it's okay, but it can get a little bit busy as well and a little bit overwhelming if you are brand new. So hopefully this video wasn't too long, wasn't sort of too difficult to digest. If you do get any questions, by all means leave them down below in the comments. Subscribe and like for more Pantheon content, and I'll see you in the next one.